I knew already, even at 15, 16 years old, that I couldn't tell an adult. Looked at me like this. I was 50,000 miles away. And I feel like he was trying to guilt me into giving him more money. Hey guys, so we've got a little bit of a new setup today. I'm just testing this out. I currently can't use my normal setup seating area because I have a huge fucking air conditioning unit in the way. I've turned it off for noise. You'll be able to hear the two fans on though because it is too hot today to not have anything on. But the air conditioning unit is really, really loud, so I turned it off for now. But this is why we're sitting here in front of my sofa. This is just easier for me. I also got a new chair. I got a new gaming chair. Ta-da. I figured I'd just move this chair and sit in front of this just to do some more story times for you guys, because I did a vote and it was between talking about toxic ex-boyfriends and those relationships and family money toxicity. So I'll probably talk about that in the near future because these are kind of things I just kind of want to get off my chest. And I've spoken before about how talking about some of these things is almost like therapy because I'm talking through it, and I hope that at least some of these stories, if they're helpful to anyone, where they identify that, you know, something that they didn't realise was toxic in their relationship or in a previous relationship, they can identify now. Although I hope no one has been through any of the things that I've been through, because I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about my last boyfriend because we talked about that in a previous video, even a previous video to that when he broke up with me the first time. So instead, we're going to talk about some of my first ever relationships. So I've been in long-term relationships since I was 15. My first ever boyfriend was 2 years older than me. I was introduced to him by a friend who I'm no longer friends with, but I know she meant well. I'm not blaming her for this. In some ways I wish that I'd never ever met that person. This person, let's call Mike. Mike was extremely jealous. He was extremely controlling, to the point of I used to get texts or calls, or if I had like family arrangements that I had to go to, instead of spending time with him, he would get completely jealous. He would get in an argument with me about it because I think he may have had some sort of narcissistic disorder, to be honest, because I don't know why else you would get jealous of someone just spending some time with their family. It wasn't a nice environment straight away, but because I'd never been in relationships before, I didn't recognise that's what this was. He was emotionally abusive because I tried to break up with him multiple times, and whenever I did try to break up with him, he would threaten suicide. I remember one weekend especially that it happened, and I had to go into school the next day, and my teacher said to me why hadn't I done any sort of homework, why practice for the tests and stuff, and the only thing I could say was that it was personal reasons. I knew already, even at 15, 16 years old, that I couldn't tell an adult, I couldn't tell anyone that my partner was being abusive to me, to the point that it was affecting my life outside of him. And that wasn't just the only time. When he wasn't threatening suicide, and I mean literally cutting his arms with his sword, he had like a samurai sword, in front of me. This was the same man who sexually assaulted me, and I fucking hate him. I will always hate him. I'm not going to talk about him much more because I really don't think he deserves spoken about, thought about. As far as I'm concerned, he's a complete piece of shit, and I never ever want to think about him ever again. I actually didn't even remember half of this stuff a few years ago because I had blocked it out. So I was with that person for a year, which for a long-term relationship, and that isn't technically that long. The next two are a lot longer. So My next boyfriend I was with for 4 years. We definitely had our troubles. I'm not going to say the next two people were abusive. I'm just saying that those relationships definitely had quite a bit of toxicity in them. And I want to share my thoughts as to why I think that. So when I met this person, I was 17. I was very, very skinny. I was like a size 6 to 8. The reason I was a size 6 to 8, something I don't really talk about very often, is that I had some type of eating disorder. I never had a doctor specifically say this is the eating disorder you had, because I never went to a doctor about it. But I was starving myself. I was drinking water when I was hungry to try and starve off the hunger. And when I did eat big meals, I made myself sick. To the point where I didn't have to put my fingers down my throat, I could literally push my diaphragm to make myself sick. In certain circumstances, when I get ill, like for instance, I've been really unwell this week. I had like bad headaches and really bad fatigue. I've been feeling dizzy. I think it's like the heat is really got to me. Yeah, in certain circumstances I can still make myself ill. Not something I'm proud of. It's why I never ever speak about my eating disorder. But I definitely had some sort of bulimia or anorexia, and I think a lot of women, I've always spoken about this, a lot of women have, I think because of social media, the media, it's like even when I was a kid, like looking at magazines, you just see skinny girl after skinny girl. Because of that, you kind of get some kind of body dysmorphia in your head, like, oh, I'd prefer to have skinnier arms or less jiggly thighs or whatever. I think a lot of women struggle with that. And anyway, I met this guy when I was slim, and he was into very skinny girls. His previous girlfriend that he was with for like a couple of years, I think. She was really skinny. She was a bit taller than me, but he showed me a picture of her when we were together, and she was very slim. She was like a model, sort of slim. So a couple of years after we had been dating, and like I was eating a lot more normally, and my body type, my standard, like if I'm not working out and really like controlling every single morsel of food that I eat in a very unhealthy way, I'm easily a size 10. So I started gaining weight, and this person, let's call them Peter, used to look at me. His face was literally showed disgust. He would look at like my fat on my arm or something, and he didn't realise he was doing it, which in some ways made it worse because that he couldn't even control himself. He looked at me like this. I'll never forget it. Because for someone who already had a problem with their body image, to have the person who is meant to love you look at you in a way of disgust, oh, it really affected me. I actually wanted to break up with this guy 2 years before I did because of this happening, and the reason I didn't was simply just due to the fact that, and that sounds awful, I wouldn't have had a social life had I not been dating him, because all the people that I was going out to bars and clubs and stuff, seeing his friends' bands and stuff, all of those people were his friends. And all the people I knew from school, they'd all gone over to college. I didn't really have a close group of friends. Sort of jumped from group to group, and because of that, I don't have any close friends from school. I don't think any of these people would still be my friend after I broke up with him. So I stayed in that toxic relationship for another 2 years. And I don't know if I regret that. So the third and last relationship I want to talk about is a relationship I was in for 7 years. Let's call that person Doug. So I met this person through one of the only people that stayed in contact with me after I broke up with Peter. The first few years we were together, it was always like us against his family or us against my family. For instance, he was living with his dad at the time, but his dad lived like in the middle of nowhere, and because of that he couldn't get a full-time job because he couldn't drive. That there was a health issue which meant he couldn't. So I offered for him to move in with me, which I was at my mum's, and we would pay rent. He could get a job a lot easier because he'd be local. We'll get into this in the money toxicity video. I was paying a lot of money towards the house, and I had been for a long time, and therefore I thought, do you know what, if I'm paying all this money and the person's going to be staying with me in my room, which I'm technically renting, I don't see why there's any reason why he can't live there. I'd be paying extra to help with bills to cover for him anyway. When he moved in, it was kind of me and him against my mum because she was always complaining, she was always moaning. When we moved into a family member's a few years later, again, it was kind of us against them. It was only when we moved into this flat, it wasn't always us feeling like we were battling against someone else. Like we had to stick together because of that. I feel like if that hadn't happened, we may have broken up a long time prior, because that relationship wasn't perfect. It was nowhere near as bad as my first two relationships, don't get me wrong, and I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why I let a lot of things go. We got in quite a few arguments, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't to the extent that of the previous two. It wasn't as toxic as the previous two, and because of that, I thought that must mean it's a healthy relationship. It wasn't. Yeah, if you're with someone for well over 4 to 5 years and you've moved in, you should be having the best time, like living in your new home together. It should have been immediately really apparent that we were not right for each other. The toxic part about that relationship wasn't the relationship itself. The toxicity happened when we broke up. First of all, I was training a number of people in a completely different country. I had to go back there 3 times because I had already booked holiday in September and October. Therefore, the company I work for had to allow me to come home for my holidays, and then they would send me back out after my holidays, back out to Malaysia. I am so grateful I got to go to Malaysia. I had some of the best experiences while I was there, but there is one video there that will forever have this sort of taint to it, and that's when I went to the Petronas Gardens. Because I went out to the Petronas Gardens, I had a walk around, I did some filming because I thought it was really, really pretty. And then I got back to my hotel room and I called my partner. It's a weekend, I knew he was at home because he wasn't working, and he always used to want to find out about what I'd done that day. So I was really excited because I'd walked around all these gardens, which I found really pretty. And I was due back 1 week later, by the way. I was only ever out there for 3.5 weeks at most, because like I said, I had these holidays in between. I was due back in 5 fucking days, and he broke down in tears and said he couldn't do this anymore, and he wanted to break up with me. I was 50,000 miles away. He couldn't have made some excuse for 5 fucking days as to why he didn't really want to talk. Maybe he was busy, literally anything else. 50,000 miles away. I have forgiven him for it, because if I don't forgive him, I'm going to be walking around with that for the rest of my life, and he doesn't deserve to have me think about that for the rest of my life, like have to hold on to that anger from that moment. I still think that was a really shitty thing to do, and he has admitted to me since that he regrets the way he did it, but I guess he thought he couldn't hold it in any longer. The toxicity continued though after I got back the second time. I was due to go back to Malaysia, and I asked if he could stay living at my place until I got back last time, because I needed someone to look after the animals that I trusted, and he agreed. So when I got back the next time, he moved out, literally the day after I got back. When he was moving out, he moved out on a day that I was working, And I did say to him before his family members even turned up, I said, can you just make sure you keep it down? I've got a bunch of phone, like, work calls, because I was working from home, so, like, just, can you be aware of the noise? And he said, yeah, no, I completely understand. Some work calls, and him and his brother were in the other room, making a bunch of noise, and I literally had to put myself on mute, and ask, and sort of had to shout to the other room, but I thought I asked quite politely if they could just keep it down because I was on a work call. His aunt, who was also helping, seemed to be frustrated at me because I didn't say hello to them when they came into my home, forgetting the fact that, you know, this person had broken up with me and completely shattered me. It took me about a year to properly get over that relationship and everything that had happened, because like I said, it gets worse. He sort of shouted to me from because I've got like one of those screens that you open and close. I did that so I could have some privacy while I was working, and she sort of shouted over the thing saying, oh, hi Chloe, I thought it'd be rude not to say hello considering I'm in your home. And I was like, yeah, hi, thanks, I'm just kind of working. And she did the same thing to me, almost. I feel like it was to get back at me when I had to drop more stuff off to him a few weeks later at her house. I just thought that was really, like, underhanded, considering the reason I didn't say hello was because I was fucking working. I was literally on phone calls. If I was in the office, I wouldn't have been able to, you know, say hello. It's not like I was inviting these people into my home to have a cup of tea. They were coming into my home to move this person out of my house because he'd broken up with me after 7 years of being together. Like, I don't think that's the best time to have a chinwag about how the fuck you are. Anyway, as you do, I was curious, and I think it was the next weekend, I had a look on Facebook to see what he was getting up to or whatever, just, you know, curiosity. And I saw that, I can't remember if he was tagged in it or what, but someone he used to work with, who, let's call them Annie, they tagged them in a photo of him and her going mini golfing together with her parents. This person, this Annie, by the way, I remember her very well because I remember when she got broken up with by her previous fiance. Sorry, I'm only laughing because I know what happens later. Yeah, she got broken up with by her fiance and she was heartbroken, and she and my then boyfriend, Doug, were very close, so he was like really supportive of her at work and stuff, and probably was texting behind the scenes, let's just be honest. Anyway, she went house sitting with her friend, a guy friend, and ended up having some sort of physical relations, let's just say. I don't want to talk about someone else's, you know, I feel like that's unjust of me, but I'm just saying that because the reason I know that is because she told my boyfriend all the gory details, which, looking back, like, who does that unless they're trying to possibly change the person's view on them from a friend to something else? That's when my sort of brain went when I found out that these two had clearly started dating. So anyway, because we were apparently friends at the time, I texted him, was like, oh, did you have a nice time with Annie last weekend or something like that? I was very fucking sarcastic. And he was like, oh my god, how did you know? And I was like, mate, there's this thing called the internet. Like, if you're not going to be subtle about it, either tell me or block me or something. But just to make out like, oh my god, how did you know? What? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, we weren't friended, but he hadn't blocked me, so and his profile was fucking public. I could see everything. We got into an argument. I don't, this was years ago, so I don't remember exactly what I said. I just remember being angry and frustrated with him. Not because I ever thought we would get back together, just because 7 years and about 3 or 4 months we were together. 7 years! And he moved on within like a week. So either he moved on really fucking quickly, or they were talking behind the scenes, possibly before we broke up, and at the very least the second after we broke up. So anyway, I feel like to spite me, they put these profile pictures up of them two cuddling in a mirror. I mean, I may just be reading into that, But at the time, because it was literally right after we had the argument, it seemed very clear to me that that was just spiteful. So I can't remember if I blocked him at that point. And the reason I say that is because I know that within about 3 months, assume that they started dating when he actually moved out. Let's just assume. He asked her to marry him on Valentine's Day. But I remember there being the show of a ring. And then 3 months later, there was a picture of an ultrasound. And when I discussed this with him, I think I was trying to get rid of his shit, because basically, still, we haven't been together for 4 years. Still, his shit is still in my aunt's loft. Because when we moved in here, she was kind enough to let us put our stuff in her loft and like use it there as storage rather than pay for a storage unit, which we were originally doing. He's not tried at all to try and get this stuff. Now, we've had COVID in between, and like I said, he can't drive, but his family can drive. He could pay for someone, a man with a van, to come and get it. His expectation, I still get annoyed about this, but his expectation is that I take all the stuff out of the loft by myself, load it into my car, even though there's way more stuff that would ever fit in my fucking Fiat 500. Load that up into my car, drive it to him, free of charge.
The audacity!
It's bad enough that his shit is sitting free of charge in someone else's fucking home that he doesn't even know anymore, but that he's made no attempt to try and actually make arrangements to come and get this stuff still pisses me off. I think because it's not a resolved issue, it's still an issue from 4 years ago that is still outstanding because he's such a fucking child. When I contacted him to say, look, I've got some time off, I think I said like, around November, if that works for you. And he was like, oh, November's going to be a really busy month. And I was like, oh, is that because of the birth of your child? How did you know?
What?
There's this thing called Facebook. It's not hard to find out information when you leave it out publicly. Like, this person is so fucking dumb. And what annoys me the most, okay, is that before he got engaged, okay, he complained that he had a credit card that had a shitload of outstanding money on it. And I was like, well, that's funny you should say that because you left me with the whole mortgage outstanding. You left me with a shitload of credit card debt myself that I literally had to amalgamate into a loan to pay that off. And that's still outstanding, by the way. I'm still paying that off every single fucking month. But that's my responsibility. They're in my name. He had one credit card and we used it to pay the full year's worth of council tax on there. We used it for, I think, a few, our rabbit at the time was very, very ill, so we had to go to a specialist, and I think we put a few of the payments on his credit card, because I couldn't afford at the time to put it on mine. I'll calculate how much the council tax that you, if you were renting, would have had to be paid for those months. I'll pay like half or whatever. So I calculated it, how much that would have been, and he said, because he said there was over £4,000 on there, I was like, excuse me? I was expecting maybe like £2,000. Where'd the £4,000 come from? And I calculated it all, and I said, I'll pay you £1,000, basically, to go away. And he said no, he expects minimum 1,500. And I was like, I'll give you 1,300. And he was like, sold. What annoys me is that I guarantee the additional couple of £1,000s came from that fucking engagement ring. And I think he was trying to get me to pay for it so he didn't have to. Because where else would he have got that fucking engagement ring? But this is what frustrates me. When I said to him about, you know, coming to collect his shit in that November 2019, and him saying, oh, we're going to be a bit busy, he did say to me again that he was still struggling with that credit card. And I feel like he was trying to guilt me into giving him more money, even though I'm one person by myself to pay for all of this. And he and his fiancée had both of their salaries to pay for their new home, which I'm pretty sure they got a bigger place than I have. And he, I swear, was trying to guilt me into giving him more money. I'm sorry, but where the fuck do you get off asking someone you haven't been with for over a year for more money? Where did you get off asking for any money anyway? But he had made two huge life, well actually three huge life choices since then, since we've been together. He made a choice to get engaged, he made a choice to keep that fucking child, and he made a choice to get a house. And that he has literally been married and had this kid and has this home and still not make any arrangements to come and get his shit. His shit. I've arranged to split the boxes, like this was my stuff, this was his stuff. All that's got to happen and he needs to make some sort of arrangements to come and collect it, and I'll happily be there at the time because I don't think it's fair that he just deals with my aunt by himself. So I would do my part to help. I'm just not going to go all the way for someone that I don't have any care for anymore. I don't give a shit about him or his family and his fiance, and if that's what he wanted in life, that's fine. But can he just get the fuck out of mine? Like, I would really like to just completely shut this chapter, but it's so hard when there's a piece of it that still needs to be sorted and resolved. By the way, I have no way of contacting him because he changed his phone number. The only way we've had any contact over the past 4 years is through Instagram, which he never ever ever fucking looks at or checks. It just leaves me in a really shitty position. Anyway, that's my therapy for today. I hope you guys like these kind of story times. I know some of them can get very, very personal, but like I said, I feel like sometimes you need to kind of talk about these things just to get them out of the way, off your chest, off your shoulders. Going in your box. He's getting in his box. But yeah, if you did like this video, make sure to give this a like and subscribe if you like it. I'd really appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed the video, and hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!